I'm sure there's quite a lot there that John said that you probably concur with. There is I suppose that one of the reasons we wanted to speak with you, there's a very specific narrative that is upsetting a lot of people right now, which is completely understandable, that of what is happening, Israel, Gaza, etc. And of course, that fed into one of the points of reference that was made by Mike Freer, the MP, that he was being attacked almost on religious grounds, whether you call it anti-Semitism, whatever you want to call it, this was not good. Now, I'm taking a guess here, but I'm pretty confident to say that Ajmal Masroor is not cut from the same Islamic cloth as you are, sir.
It's a very strange question to ask. I'll tell you why. Islamic cloth is defined by the teachings of the Quran, the scripture that Muslims follow, and the teachings of the Prophet. And neither the Quran nor the Prophet allows people to threaten, violate, or incriminate people based on their belief. You're allowed to challenge them. You're allowed to have a civilized conversation with them, but nobody should be threatened. Nobody should be harmed or even threatened to be harmed. And if anybody does that, they don't understand Islam, they don't practice Islam, and they certainly do not represent Muslims of the large number that we have, more than 2 billion in the world today.
So this organisation, Muslims Against Crusades, you would condemn their actions?
I have no idea who they are. There are many organisations that are cropping up left, right and centre.
Well, this is the organisation inspired by Ajmal Masroor that I was referring to, who've been giving Mike Freer a bit of a hard time.
Ajmal Masroor has served a prison term for what he had done in our country. I actually told Ajmal Masroor in one of the programmes that all you're interested is in publicity and nothing else. And he just smiled and walked away. I believe people like that should be ignored because they really thrive on publicity. I don't know why you guys give him publicity. There are lots of other amazing work, amazing people who are doing brilliant work in our country whose names...
Well, no, indeed. The reason he's part of this story is because he's the organisation that he inspired is responsible for some of the attacks that we are talking about here, as referenced by Mike Freer. So it's relevant that we reference him in this context.
I understand. Well, I wish he wasn't mentioned, that's all. It's my wishful thinking.
Well, no, we'd all like the man to go away, possibly back to jail for all I care. But it's just, I'm intrigued to know whether you condemn that organisation and what they have done.
Of course, I condemn anyone who preaches hate, vile, including Tommy Robinson, who has been doing it for years. Anyone who preaches racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, any form of hate preach from anyone is not acceptable. And I think this is something that we need to be very careful of. When we go down this route, we dehumanize human beings. And we can't be dehumanizing anyone because we're human by the very nature. There is a verse in the Quran where God says, and God has created all human beings with the honor and dignity at birth, and they are to be treated with honor and dignity. And that is taken away when we look at them as objects of ridicule, when we look at them as objects that we can kill, or we can destroy, or we can attack.
I agree. If you reduce, if you reduce people to almost to the value of an inanimate object, that's exactly what you get. I'm sure Chowdhury and Robinson would both say they stay within the law, but of course those that follow those people don't always do that. And we have seen this, and I guess to bring up the specifics of Israel and Gaza and what is happening there, understandably, there's a lot of upset. There's also a lot of anger. People's tempers will be inflamed, but we can keep that, as distressing as it might be, within the confines of civility, I would think.
Look, I say to you again from the Quranic verse, God advises anyone who claims to be a Muslim, believes in God and the scripture, that they should always be just and fair. They should not allow their hatred of anybody to sway them away from serving justice. They should not use persons' status, economic, political, or social or religious status to not serve justice or give them exemption from justice. So Muslims are by far constantly reminded of the concept of justice. So what's happening in Israel and in Palestine is not a new story. It's been going on for nearly 100 years. And I have always been consistent with my position. My position has been that nobody should be living in fear. Nobody should be attacked. No land should be stolen. No one should be occupied. And no one should have to live under threats or being bombed or being taken hostage. Currently in Israel and Palestine, sadly, awful things are happening. Now, if our parliamentarians, our media pundits, our scholars, our leaders, opinion formers don't remain objective and fair in their analysis, and if they start pandering to what we call fermenting hate or fueling the fire of hate, unfortunately, the world will be in chaos. So we're all responsible, every single one of them, including yourself, to make sure what we portray is objective, is fair, and it's true. When we veer away from the truth, we cause trouble for ourselves.
Okay, Ajmal, can I ask, are there two Islams out there? Because, and the reason I ask this, I'm not trying to be facetious, but if you listen to, I mean, we mentioned the man Chowdhury, but I'm thinking of others, whether it's some of those on those marches that we've seen in London, perfectly legit to have a march and a protest. I get that, but we seem to hear a lot of voices who are calling for the obliteration of Israel. They're calling for individual Jews to be taken away and wiped out. We hear disproportionately quite a lot of those voices. Even, you know, I don't know, the school in Yorkshire where a teacher was hounded out the classroom, now has to live under an assumed name, changed his identity because he was hounded out of his job because some Muslims didn't like what he'd done. It's fine to not like it. There's clearly some who don't follow your version of Islam because they're not doing all that passive stuff you referred to. In fact, violence is very much the core of what some of those people are all about. Who are those Muslims?
Well, look, it's like saying there are two versions of Britain, one represented by Tommy Robinson and the right-wing fascist that we see, or racist, and then the other that is represented by...
With respect, it isn't quite that, because these guys are claiming a Quranic directive when they do what they do.
You had a long time to ask me the question, so give me a little bit of time to answer.
I'm just adding that context to it, if it helps.
I understand. So if I could frame my answer properly. So there are people with differing interpretations to anything. They could be reading Macbeth and taking a very different interpretation. Anyone who calls for violence, anyone who calls for annihilation of any people, death and destruction of other people, according to Islam, taking one life is like taking the lives of the entire humanity. Remember this. Benjamin Netanyahu has also said the same thing about the Palestinians. Their foreign minister, home minister, has said the same thing about complete destruction of the Palestinian people, Gaza, wiping them out from the face of this earth, in fact, nuking them as...
I don't think Netanyahu has ever talked about wiping out Palestinians. He might have talked about wiping out Hamas. I stand to be corrected, but I'm pretty sure he hasn't.
Well, I think if you look at his...
I'm pretty confident he's never said that.
I'm about
nor has anybody else from the Israeli government.
Amalek example that he has used.
Okay, but I don't want you making stuff up on the telly, that's all.
Well, I'm not. I'm not making stuff up. I'm saying this to you that there are many ministers within the Israeli government that have proposed that the Palestinians should be wiped out. They should be nuked from the face of this earth. These kind of conversations don't help, whether it is done by a Jew or a Muslim or a Christian. Right. I am not any of them. I'm saying something simple. Don't do that, because that makes you look, stupid is not the right word.
Okay.
That doesn't help. So the bottom line here, Ian, is that we all have one world in which we should live. And there is only one way to live, and that is to live in harmony and peace and share this world. And we can't create peace and we can't create harmony without injustice. Any injustice done in the world, we should all be together standing up and saying, no more injustice. There should be fairness and equality in all parts of the world. That's what I stand for. That's what my faith stands for. And I believe you and others stand for the same thing. So let's be consistent about it.
I hope so. And on that point, Ajmal, thank you. We will speak again, sir.